Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the fascinating mechanics behind our everyday conversations. I mean, we talk all the time, right? But how often do we actually stop and think about how we talk? Well, today we're going to look at the hidden architecture of dialogue. We'll discover how we can fundamentally improve our relationships, especially in the workplace, by shifting from quick, reactive responses to conscious connection.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The hidden forces of talk. 2. 3 modes of conversation. 3. Navigating the professional workplace. 4. Tips for choosing dialogue. And 5. Habits for daily talk awareness.
All right, part 1, the hidden forces of talk.
So, let's start by looking beneath the surface of what we think we know about everyday interaction. Why is everyday talk so difficult and prone to misunderstandings? It's a great question, isn't it? As humans, we absolutely need relationships to get what we want and need out of life. And to keep those relationships going, we use communication. But even though we talk every single day, we're usually completely blind to how our communication actually develops and functions. Because our brains love efficiency, there's this massive, invisible apparatus working behind the scenes. We think we're just saying words, but there is a whole lot more happening.
Over 60 years of communication research reveals a pretty startling truth. Our face-to-face talk is heavily hijacked by automatic, unconscious programming. We all have this deeply ingrained cultural learning stored away in the non-conscious part of our minds. And since these processes are so deeply learned, they just operate on autopilot in most situations. Get this, our non-conscious programming actually reacts milliseconds before our conscious brain even has a chance to process the interaction. We like to think we're making conscious choices about what to say, but a lot of the time we're just running on cruise control.
And that brings us to the core problem. This quote absolutely hits the nail on the head. These automatic processes don't just idle in the background. They work directly through our own unique sense of self. Our sense of self acts as this incredibly powerful filter. We're constantly evaluating and defending this self. So when we're mid-conversation, this filter is actively shaping how we see, think, and feel about the other person. Honestly, seeing what's real and right in front of us is incredibly difficult.
Moving on to Section 2, 3 modes of conversation.
But hey, don't worry, there's a way to take the steering wheel back. Once we realize we're operating on autopilot, we can start taking effective action. Researchers break face-to-face talk down into 3 distinct modes. First, you've got connect talk. These are your essential, everyday exchanges designed purely to create and sustain relationships. Then, there's control talk. This is our automatic, quick and, let's be real, judgmental response when we hit differences, disagreements, or disorder. And finally, the gold standard, dialogue talk. This is the talk of conscious choice and self-management. We use it to navigate complicated situations and create a workable connection.
Let's make this concrete. Connect talk is when you casually ask a colleague, "Hey, how was your weekend?" It's smooth, it keeps the bond going. But the very second there's a disagreement over a deadline, boom, control talk kicks in. It's a knee-jerk defensive reaction. You stop connecting and immediately start protecting your sense of self. It happens incredibly fast, and it almost always distances us from the reality of the moment.
All right, Section 3, navigating the professional workplace. Let's see how all of this plays out when we apply these concepts to one of our most vital environments. The source material describes everyday talk as an arena of constant struggle, and nowhere is that more true than in the professional workplace. It is a critical environment where positive, clear communication is an absolute must. We're constantly bouncing between those quick, automatic, judgmental reactions of control talk and the slower, conscious awareness required for dialogue talk. It's the ultimate, and frankly, sometimes exhausting testing ground for our communication skills.
So imagine a coworker suddenly questions the data on a project you've worked really hard on. Your non-conscious mind instantly deploys control talk. You feel like your sense of self is under attack, right? So your automatic reaction is to immediately argue and defend your numbers. But dialogue talk is the conscious alternative. You feel that defensive urge, but you pause. You actively choose a slower response. Instead of arguing, you might say, "I see we have different numbers here. Can you walk me through your perspective?" You're managing yourself so you can manage the situation, keeping your focus on building a workable connection despite the disagreement.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 4, tips for choosing dialogue. Since dialogue talk is basically the key to successfully navigating these tense workplace situations, we need to know exactly how to activate it. These 4 tips drawn from the source are your tactical guide. First, you've got to recognize when a situation is emotionally fraught. Really feel the temperature rising in the room. Second, catch yourself.
Identify your internal urge to use a quick, judgmental, control talk reaction. Third, make a choice. You consciously decide to engage in self-management rather than just lashing out. And finally, shift your goal. Instead of trying to win the argument, your focus becomes creating a workable connection right here and now.
And finally, Section 5, Habits for Daily Talk Awareness.
Now, to actually use those tips in the heat of the moment, we have to build our muscles in advance. The source gives us a clear path to go from an unconscious communicator to a conscious one, using 3 actionable habits. First, become aware of your deep cultural learning and those non-conscious filters. Remind yourself that you see the world as you are. Next, actively notice your automatic control talk responses during minor disagreements. Just observe them without any judgment. And finally, practice making a conscious choice to slow your emotional reactions down. Speed is the enemy of dialogue, guys. By deliberately slowing down, you take back control.
When you practice these habits, you achieve this ultimate transformation. You are literally rewiring how you communicate. You stop distancing yourself from the reality of the moment with quick defensive reactions. Instead, you show up with a slower response that's rooted in conscious awareness and acceptance of whatever is facing you right here, right now.
And this brings us to perhaps the most beautiful insight from the source material. Effective talk isn't just some practical tool for climbing the corporate ladder or winning negotiations. It goes way deeper than that. Every single time we choose dialogue, every time we slow our emotional reactions to move toward mutual understanding, we literally add goodness to life. We make our workplaces and our world just a little bit better.
Which leaves us with this final, crucial question to ask ourselves. The next time you feel that spike of defensiveness in a meeting, what are you gonna do? Will you let the hidden forces of automatic control take the wheel, or will you pause, manage your sense of self, and purposefully choose the conscious path of dialogue? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Take these tools, keep an eye on those automatic responses today, and go add some goodness to your workplace.